Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're stepping into a story set on a quiet, rainy night, where a child's innocent question has the power to change everything. Will Uncle D stay with my mother forever? From that fragile moment, love, fear, and hope collide in a tale of storms, promises, and the search for a place to truly belong. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you question the meaning of family and forever. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter. Tonight, I want to take you with me into a story that begins on a quiet, rainy evening. Outside, the sound of raindrops falling on the roof was steady, almost like a lullaby meant to calm the heart. But inside a small, half-finished house, the silence was broken by a question so simple, yet so heavy. Little Maya, her eyes wide and innocent, looked up and asked, "Uncle D, will you stay with my mother forever?" Her words, though soft, carried the weight of something far larger than her small voice. Hope, fear, longing. And in that fragile moment, it felt as though love, family, and the promise of tomorrow rested entirely on how Day would answer. The storm outside grew louder, pounding against the bamboo walls and dripping through the cracks in the roof. The air was filled with the earthy scent of wet soil and the faint smoke curling from the kitchen fire. Inside, the flicker of a single oil lamp painted warm light across the room. Huyen sat quietly, her hands busy sewing an old shirt. Beside her, Day was bent over the wall, trying to patch a gap to keep the rain out. Between them lay little Maya. Her tiny hands tugged at the edge of her blanket, but her eyes were not on the rain or her toys. They were fixed on D. To her, he was more than just Uncle D. He was the man who carried her on his shoulders down muddy paths, who fixed her broken toys, who made her laugh when her mother's face was too tired to smile. And so, as the storm roared louder, Maya's small voice cut through the air once more. "Uncle Day," she whispered, tilting her head, "will you stay with my mother forever?" Huyen froze. The needle slipped from her hand, and a flush rose to her cheeks. Her heart raced, caught between fear and a hope she didn't dare admit. She couldn't even bring herself to meet Dee's eyes. Day, too, paused. His hand hovered still on the bamboo wall. That question struck him deeply. It was innocent, pure, but it carried a weight he couldn't ignore. For a moment, the storm outside seemed quieter compared to the one rising in his chest. He turned, sat gently beside Maya, and tucked her blanket closer. His voice was calm, warm, almost like the rain itself. "Maya," he said softly, "the rain may come and go, but some promises are meant to last forever. I will never leave you or your mother." Maya's lips curved into a satisfied little grin. Her heart, so easily comforted, was at peace. Within moments, her eyes closed. By dawn, the storm had passed. The air outside was cool and fresh, filled with the scent of wet earth and the sweetness of blooming flowers. Sunlight slipped gently through the bamboo slats, casting golden stripes across the floor, where Maya still lay curled in her blanket. Dee was already awake. He stepped outside, the ground damp beneath his feet. Droplets of water clung to banana leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. He breathed deeply, and inside him stirred something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of home. Inside, Huyen stirred as well. She rose quietly, tying her hair back with a simple ribbon. When she stepped to the doorway, she saw the small vegetable patch she and Dee had planted together. She stopped, her breath catching in her chest. For a long moment, she just stood there, caught between the caution that had long protected her and a warmth that both comforted and frightened her. Maya's voice cut through her thoughts. "Mommy, Uncle Dee, look, the sun is out." She rushed barefoot to the doorway, eyes wide with wonder. Dee turned, soil still on his hands, and smiled. "Yes, little one, the rain has helped our garden. Soon, you'll see cucumbers and beans growing." Maya clapped her hands with delight and hugged his leg tightly, her laughter bright and pure. Huyen's eyes softened as she watched them. Her daughter's joy was contagious, spilling warmth into her own guarded heart. After a simple breakfast of rice porridge and pickled vegetables, Dee suggested, "Shall we walk to the stream today? The air is fresh after the storm. It will be good for us." Huyen hesitated, then nodded. She knew she couldn't hide behind her walls forever. The three of them set out together along the muddy path. Maya skipped ahead, chasing butterflies with carefree laughter. The stream sparkled under the morning sun, its water rushing gently over smooth stones. Maya knelt down, splashing her hands with joy, while Day bent nearby, gathering broad leaves to fold into toy boats for her. From the side, Huyen watched. For so long, her life had been only about survival, protecting Maya at all costs. But here, by the stream, with Dee's steady presence beside them, she felt something she almost didn't recognize, as though her burdens were no longer hers to carry alone. She whispered softly to herself, so quietly the sound of water nearly drowned it out. Maybe we can begin again." At that moment, Dee looked up, as if sensing her thoughts. Their eyes met, steady, quiet, yet filled with something undeniable. The day stretched gently before them, the first day after the storm, and it felt like life itself was offering them a chance to begin anew. That evening, the sky darkened once more. Clouds gathered, and soon the rain returned, tapping gently against the roof. But this time, the sound no longer felt heavy. Inside the little house, the oil lamp flickered, filling the room with a warm golden glow. Maya had already fallen asleep, her tiny hand clutching the corner of her blanket. Her face was calm, her breathing steady, her dreams untouched by the storms outside. Huyen sat close by, her eyes resting on her daughter's peaceful expression. Yet her heart was restless. Over and over, Maya's question echoed in her mind. Will Uncle Dee stay with my mother forever? She turned her head slightly. At the small wooden table sat Dee. His clothes were still damp from the rain, his hair clinging dark to his forehead. His hands moved steadily as he repaired a broken bamboo basket, weaving each strip carefully, as though even the smallest task carried weight and meaning. And in that quiet moment, something stirred in Huyen's chest. For years, she had endured alone, survived alone, protected Maya with all the strength she had. But here was a man who stayed, even in the storm, who carried firewood through the rain, who patched leaky walls and mended baskets in silence, who made Maya laugh as though joy was something natural, not rare. Her lips trembled. She whispered softly, almost afraid to hear her own voice. Dee, why are you doing all this for us? Her breath caught. tears pricking her eyes. She turned away quickly, unwilling to let him see the weakness she tried so hard to hide. But deep inside, her heart whispered the words she could not say aloud. Maybe forever is possible. Life often throws storms at us, storms of hardship, of loneliness, of fear. And in those moments, it's easy to believe that we must carry everything alone. But Day had chosen differently. He did not turn away when he saw Huyen and Maya struggling. He carried wood through the rain. He mended baskets at night. He offered a steady presence, asking for nothing in return. His sacrifices were quiet, almost invisible. But they spoke more loudly than grand gestures ever could. Huyen, who once believed she could only depend on herself, was beginning to learn something new. That trusting someone else does not mean weakness. It means sharing the weight of life. And Maya, her innocent heart, had already seen the truth. Sometimes children can sense love more clearly than words could ever explain. As the rain tapped gently against the roof, Day finally lifted his head from the basket. His gaze found Huyen because, he said simply, his voice steady, "You and Maya deserve more than storms, and if I can give even a little shelter, then it's worth it." Huyen's breath caught. The tears she had tried to hold back slipped free. She turned quickly, brushing them away, but Dee had already seen. He didn't speak further. He didn't need to. His presence, his quiet persistence, said enough. The night stretched on, and outside, the rain softened into a hush. Inside, a fragile calm settled. And for the first time in a long time, Huyen felt that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to walk this life alone. By morning, the sky had cleared once again. Birds sang from the trees, their calls bright and cheerful. The earth still glistened with rain, and fresh blossoms filled the air with sweetness. Maya burst out of the house barefoot, laughing as she chased after a butterfly. Dee followed behind, carrying a bundle of firewood. Huyen stood in the doorway, watching them, her heart caught in a tangle of fear and warmth. She had guarded her heart for so long, yet it was slowly being opened by the simplest things. Later that day, the three of them returned to the stream. The water rushed gently over smooth stones, clear and bright in the sunlight. Defolded leaves into toy boats, setting them afloat with Maya's delighted cheers. Huyen stood back, watching, her chest tightening with emotion she couldn't name. For so long, her life had been about survival, about keeping her daughters safe in a world that seemed determined to test them. But standing there, watching Dee's calm strength, watching Maya's laughter ring through the air, she realized something. Her burdens didn't feel as heavy anymore. She whispered softly, so softly that the sound of the stream almost drowned it out. Maybe this is what it means to begin again. Dee didn't hear the words, but at that moment, he looked up. Their eyes met, and in the quiet space between them, something unspoken passed. Something steady, something undeniable. That evening, after a simple meal, the three of them sat together by the lamplight. Maya curled up with her blanket, fighting sleep as she clutched one of the little toy boats Doe had made for her. Huyen sat sewing quietly, her hands more at ease than before. And Day, repairing a cracked wooden stool, worked steadily without a word. The silence between them was not heavy. It was warm. It felt like home. Huyen's thoughts wandered back to the countless nights she had spent alone, carrying every burden herself. But now, here was Diep, proving through small, quiet actions that love doesn't always arrive with grand declarations. Sometimes, it shows itself in mended walls, in laughter shared, in promises whispered to a child. And in that moment, she realized something even deeper. Love, when nurtured with patience and sincerity, has the power to heal wounds we thought would never close. As the night deepened, the rain began again, light and steady. The sound no longer carried loneliness. It was soothing, like a song meant to cradle them all. Maya drifted off, her tiny hand curled against the blanket. Huyen set down her sewing and glanced at Day. He was still at the stool, his expression calm, focused, his presence steady as always. Her lips trembled once more, and though her voice was nearly lost to the sound of the rain, she whispered, "Maybe forever isn't just a dream." The words hung in the air, fragile but real. Diep didn't speak. Instead, he met her gaze, his eyes filled with the quiet fire of a man who had already chosen. And in that silence, something shifted. Because life is not meant to be walked alone. True strength is not in carrying every burden by yourself. It is in allowing someone else to stand beside you. That night, within the rhythm of the rain, Huyen, Maya, and Diep found something greater than shelter. They found the courage to believe again in love, in family, in forever. And though storms would come again, they knew one thing for certain. Together, they had already begun. On a stormy night in a small village, little Maya asks a question that silences the room. Will Uncle Diep stay with my mother forever? Her innocent words carry the weight of hope and longing. Day, a man who has endured loss, begins to build more than walls. He builds trust and safety for Maya and her mother, Huyen, through quiet sacrifices, carrying wood in the rain, mending baskets by lamplight, and making Maya laugh. He becomes the shelter they never thought possible. Yet Huyen, scarred by years of loneliness, fears promises too easily broken. As rain softens into a lullaby, fragile hope blooms in her heart. Maybe forever is real. But storms return, and with them, doubts. Can love truly survive the tests ahead? Or will life's storms tear this fragile family apart? The answer waits in the next chapter.